must strengthen community bonds with law enforcement, including cities like Chicago that have been an absolute and total disaster. We'll be talking about Chicago today because that is something that, in terms of our nation, nobody would believe it could be happening. They had 63 incidents last weekend and 12 deaths. That's bad stuff happening, and probably, I guess you have to take from the leadership. This is called bad leadership.
All right, that was President Trump saying leadership needs to step up in Chicago after these, what I consider to be epidemic levels of shootings and murders, especially over this past weekend. Now, according to reports, more than 70 people were shot over the weekend. That number has been revised upwards, and now 12 of those people are confirmed to have been killed. City's Mayor Rahm Emanuel says he has a plan to make sure that try and make sure the violence doesn't happen this weekend. Again, he's authorized sending in additional cops in the neighborhoods that have been just wrecked, where violence has wreaked havoc on these neighborhoods. But of course, they're still blaming guns. Now, what Chicago is calling strategic deployments will add more than 400 officers to 5 South Side and West Side police districts and neighborhoods. But Emanuel says people need to change the attitude in their homes to stop the violence from happening. That's where we want to bring back in Newsmax contributor and our friend, Dr. Tom Borelli. You know, Tom, this is one that really hits home for me because I was a New York City cop in the 90s. I came on the job at the end of the Dinkins administration, and I was there in the South Bronx for Giuliani's, what I considered to be textbook crime-fighting strategy alongside then Police Commissioner Bill Bratton. I was on the street, I know what works, and I can tell you this, Rahm Emanuel still isn't doing it. You have to let cops be cops. You have to implement the broken windows policing strategies. You have to let cops stop and frisk. There's got to be aggressive, while at the same time constitutional policing, and you can't let the criminal mentality vilify police. That's my opinion, Tom. What do you say?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. Can't disagree with any of the points you made. And you have the case study, you know, Dinkins versus Giuliani.
Yes.
I mean, that was a textbook example of how you flip a city that had deep problems. And, you know, trained as a scientist, that's what's the most frustrating for me. When you have an example of something that works, why don't you just repeat it?
Yeah.
Instead, they repeat the same bad experiment time and time again and expect a different result. It's like Einstein's definition of insanity. You expect the same result doing the same thing, a different result. It is really disappointing, and it's tragic. This is worse than, you know, a third world nation, the crime and the violence there. And again, this should be the front page news of every national media organization. So glad this is a topic today, because if you had the media attention on something like this, something would change. Instead, they want to talk about everything else, like Russia.
Yep, they do. Yeah. And I want to say before Miranda moves on to the next topic, the change that I saw didn't come in months. It didn't come in years. We started seeing significant crime reductions in weeks.
Wow.
We started mitigating murders
That's
in
such
weeks,
a critical
and violent
point.
assaults in weeks, in single-digit months, in a financial quarter. Lives are saved, weeks.
Wow.
We started mitigating murders
That's
in
such
weeks,
a critical
and violent
point.
assaults in weeks, in single-digit months, in a financial quarter. Lives are saved, less victims are created. There's an immediate, tangible benefit to the people, to the citizens.
Let me ask you this, though. Do you like any part of Rahm Emanuel's plan of adding those additional officers? Looking at that, that sounds like that would work.
Let me put it like this. Let me put it like this. It's a presence, but a presence without teeth. It's equivalent to rules of engagement for the military under Obama. Well, we're going to put a lot of soldiers around a base, but we're not going to let them load their weapons.
Yeah,
and that
was different compared to when you were policing, right? You've talked about it before, that people weren't afraid to use force like they are now. They're a little more hesitant.
They're terrified to use force, the cops, even when they're authorized. Look, police officers, remember something. They're issued their firearm, they're issued their taser, their baton. They are issued these devices, trained on using them.
Right.
They're allowed to use them, but we've gotten to a point where if a police officer so much as puts their hands on a suspect who's resisting, the video goes viral, the police officer's called racist, and they call for their job, and they're protesting outside their house and threatening their kids
wedding.
at school.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It is absolutely tragic, and it's getting people killed.
Yeah. All right, we want to shift gears now and talk about the Paul Manafort trial. So the prosecution will reportedly wrap up its case today. That would put the trial about 3 weeks ahead of its original date when it was scheduled to wrap up. However, it's still not clear how long it will take Manafort's defense team to present its case. Now, yesterday, 4 bank employees and an Airbnb representative testified. They claimed Manafort allegedly lied to get more than $4 million in loans for real estate. Now, I also want to mention, which John and I brought up earlier, the real highlight and the person who seems to be taking center stage isn't even Rick Gates. It hasn't been Paul Manafort. It's the judge in this case. Judge T.S. Ellis opened yesterday with an apology to the prosecution. Ellis was pretty angry after the prosecution allowed an IRS agent to testify who had spent time watching the trial. Now, Ellis apparently screamed, "Don't ever do that again." Mueller's team pointed out that Ellis actually, though, approved of that move on day one. So he apologized and said, you know, look, just because I'm wearing this robe doesn't mean I'm not human. So, Doctor, so many conservatives have been very quick to applaud Judge Ellis during this trial, present company included here. Do you think, despite this current mistake, most of his actions are helping the defense?
Well, we'll see, but I think, look, Judge Ellis, right from the very beginning, was skeptical of this whole trial because he really put it out correctly that this really has little to do with Manafort. It has a lot to do with President Trump. They're trying to squeeze Manafort, hopefully that he will, say something bad about the president. And, that's not going to happen unless he composes a script. And that's what, Professor Alan Dershowitz from Harvard and a contributor with Newsmax has said, that if you squeeze Manafort enough, he'll just create something to get out of jail. That's the real risk here. And I think the judge did the right thing. He apologized for being a human being, all right? Mm-hmm. So, that's the right thing to do. He went maybe too far, and he said he apologized for it. But at the end of the day, again, this is really about a way to get President Trump. Look at the way they invaded Manafort's home in the early morning.
Yep. Exactly. Bringing up the point that John brought up.
An abuse of power. My God, I've said this before. If that was me, if they invaded my home at that hour in the morning, I'd likely be dead because the alarm would have went off, the dog would have went down the hallway, they would have shot the dog, my home's being invaded, and I would have gotten blown away. Yep. This is our government out of control.
But 2 questions for you. So we've all been kind of guessing, estimating if he's going to face any charges at all, and if he does, if the president will pardon him. I want to ask you, there are 2 different trials, 25 counts. What do you think the likelihood that he's going to be charged with something? And if he is...
Or convicted of something.
Or convicted of something, not charged, but convicted of something. And will the president pardon him if he is?
Well, point number one, it's a guess. My crystal ball is as good as anybody else's. They have a lot of evidence about, tax evasion, nothing on Russia, most importantly. And I think most of these sorts of crimes have a very high percentage rate of finding, the plaintiff guilty. So the odds are against Mr. Manafort. Yes. As to what President Trump does, we have no idea. And, I don't even want to, speculate about that. But again, just looking at the way they're squeezing, this individual. Look, I'm no really fan of huge lobbyists, especially lobbyists who represent foreign countries. But on the other hand, we're all innocent until proven guilty. And I don't care who you are, what party you're from, what color you are. That's really the American system. And I hate to see it being abused.
All right, Tommy, only about 45 seconds left, but it's not only Mueller doing the squeezing. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte is going to be subpoenaing a bunch of people. He wants to subpoena Glenn Simpson from Fusion GPS. Most importantly, he wants to subpoena Bruce Orr, senior DOJ official, whose wife Nellie Orr was Fusion GPS's Russia specialist when this dossier was created, and that led to the FISA warrants against Carter Page. Do you think anything comes of this new round of subpoenas? Do we learn anything additional? About 30 seconds to you, Doctor.
Yeah, I think we will. Slowly things are coming out, mostly through FOIA requests, not through Congress, which is really a travesty because the DOJ and the FBI are trying to hide the ball. They're trying to wait, and hopefully from their perspective, the Democrats take the House and control, and a lot of this goes away. So they're playing the game to clock. But hopefully that will not happen. We need these officials with this power to be held accountable.
Dr. Tom Borelli, as always, an absolute pleasure to see you, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
You too, Tom. Thanks.
All right, coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at the pro